Hello, everybody. It's me, Roscoe, and welcome to another Kings of Anglia podcast special. And today I'm joined by a man you may have seen his pictures, his name, but maybe not his face. But that is Warren Page, aka Page Picks, the man who's been covering Ipswich Town.
Page Picks, come on.
But yeah, Warren, my friend.
You know, I've seen you do so many of these intros, and usually you do it in one take. Sometimes.
But no, it's a pleasure to have you on, my friend. Some people may not know, but you've been covering Ipswich Town away games for a very long time, 20 plus years. But you're retiring, my friend.
Yes. Those 4 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. finishes have finally got to me. It takes me far longer to recover now.
Yeah, they are late ones, and obviously taking those snappy snaps. Before we get into, your decision to do that and future plans, I want to sort of take you back because I wasn't even alive probably when you started, my friend.
You weren't.
But yeah, give us a little backstory of how you sort of got into photography and then also got into taking snaps at Ipswich games and just football games in general.
Well, I was bought my first camera at 15. I always liked the idea of photographing sport. The first time about 3 days after I had my first SLR camera, my dad used to be big into Speedway, and we went to White City Stadium, and I thought, I'll use my camera. So I went down the front, and I got the usual thing, stones flying at you as the Speedway bikes went past. And I thought I got some great shots. It was a little Pentax with a 50mm lens, nothing special. And it was very, very early lesson for me is make sure you know how to load the film, because basically the film hadn't been loaded properly, hadn't been wound on properly, and I was merrily taking pictures which weren't actually pictures, and the film was completely blank when I took it into the processing place. But it was onward and upward from there. I ended up being a trainee fund manager at what used to be GRE on Civic Drive. I played football for a local Sunday team, and I started taking a few pictures when I was injured or when I wasn't selected, and I just fell in love with it, really, and it sort of got put to one side. I carried on, and then my dad had a friend called Peter Cocker, who's sadly no longer with us, who was chairman of British Sugar Fonero, and I was talking to my dad, and my dad said, he volunteered me my son can take pictures, and Peter phoned me up and said, we need somebody to write reports, and you can take a few pictures as well if you like. And I thought, well, how difficult can it be to write a report? So I joined the ranks of the loads and loads of men who used to watch Saturday afternoon football and then would go try and find a local phone kiosk with which to phone in something at half time. You talk to a copy taker and give your sort of, I don't know how many words it was. You give your little first half synopsis, and then at the end of the game, you'd phone in the other part. And if I had time, I would take photos as well. And it is difficult taking photos and writing a report at the same time. I soon figured that out. And on the Saturday night, I would go back home, and I had a little enlarger and a black and white setup that I could process and print. I put a bloody great blackout thing in front of the window and spend Saturday night printing photos, and then drop them into the Anglian first thing Sunday morning. And that was part of it. It was just literally, you didn't get paid. You were part of a local football club and doing their publicity for them. There's still a lot of people around like that now.
Yeah, and you mentioned there's so much.
A few of them actually. They're very nice people, like Paul Voller and Stan Baston, and I'm sure there are others I haven't met.
There's loads, and that's what definitely non-league football. That's what makes it so great. Those volunteers and people who, try to share as much as they can with their football club. And you're saying there, Warren, so much has changed as well in there in photography. Obviously now it's all digital and you can send through 50 to 100 photos now. But back then, you had to be picky, and also a lot of big process going through it.
My first Ipswich game, I don't know whether I developed a bit of a reputation, because I did phone up the Anglian one day, and I spoke to the sports editor, and he put me onto a guy called Sam Reynolds, who was the editor of the Greenham, and he was a great old lad, and he basically said, look, I would really like to take photos for the Greenham from games. I said, I am covering the home games and taking pictures, but I would really like to take proper photos for you. And I was very arrogant about it, because I said, I've watched your staff photographers. They turn up, they do 5 minutes, and then they go. And I, being a very naive young man, I didn't realise that those poor devils who turned up and only did 5 minutes probably got about 4 other games to cover that afternoon, and were charging around like headless chickens. But I was young and excitable. So he said, okay, then I'll send you to a game. So I got paid the princely sum of £10, and I went to Ipswich Town versus Kings Lynn Reserves, and which is not where Ipswich Town play now. This is in the old Rec down by the tennis courts, and I did the game, and I showed it the other day, a photograph. There was a guy called Simon Fryatt who used to play, and he lunged between the keeper and a defender and toe poked the ball in the net, and all three of them were sort of like, it was all very animated, and that was my first published picture. I've still got prints of it now. You have to remember where you come from. I still like the tennis courts in the background. Me and backgrounds. It's like, oh, nice tennis court. But that's where it was.
Yeah. Wow. And then, obviously you progressed, and
I got asked to do a game. Sorry, there is another part. So basically, I built a bit of a reputation, did loads and loads of local games, and then the opportunity came up. Elvin King asked me, could I do Ipswich playing at Wimbledon, which was at the old Plough Lane, and I was thrilled. It's like, I've made it. This is it. This is my big break, and I was very, very excited. But you'll understand this story because of your equipment problems you had. So I had a very nice 200mm lens, which was f4, wide open, and I just couldn't cope. Plough Lane had about 3 candles, and it was
a night game, was it?
It was a night game. Oof. It was awful. There was no light. I didn't have the skill set to cope with it. I look back now and I think, well, if I'd have thought about it, I'd have put my 50mm on and sat behind the goal at f1.8, and I might have got something usable. We drove back. I went into the dark room, and you could barely see any detail in the negatives. I processed them so hard. I stayed up for hours, and then I had to drive in first thing in the morning with these really dark, grainy prints, which were awful. And Elvin wasn't a happy man. So my career should have really been cut out there. And but it was a real eye-opener. That was the big time, because I wanted to get these fantastically interesting photos. I think Ipswich won 2-1, and I really wanted to do well, and I just forgot the basics. Didn't have the skill set. Now I would just overcome.
Yeah, that's learning curve, and obviously
very much so.
Yeah, you learn. As I said, so much has changed in photography. From the dark rooms to then digital cameras. Obviously, when was it the moment where you did become that full time? Obviously you were the man who'd been doing all the away games. When was that moment?
Well, I trained as a newspaper photographer, so I started gaining more experience. I I wrote to a local news agency, who I said, they said to me, "Oh, we don't do work experience," and I was a bit disappointed. Then, out of the blue, one evening, a guy called Richard Goss phoned me up, who's still around, Gossy, and he said, "Oh, we need holiday cover for one of our photographers. Can you help us out?" And it's like, "Yeah, okay." I'd met the photographer on one of those Ian Botham walks. He was covering it for one of the national papers. And so I had I thought, this is easy. I'll just cover him for the week, do a few odd jobs. And that was the weekend that the Tesco's Copdock manager was kidnapped and his family were held to ransom. And I spent the entire week on a real steep learning curve, working for all the national papers, photographing Tesco's at night, covering all the press conferences when he was released. It was, I gained a skill set. So I went to Sheffield to train as a newspaper photographer. But I was a newspaper photographer with a passion for football. So every opportunity that I ever could, I would do football matches. So whilst I was, we had weekends off, I would come back to Ipswich and cover games. And one of my first pictures is of John Lyle sitting in this big, huge armchair, looking like a mafia boss. And it was just like, and I did a couple of games. I think I did the FA Cup game where they drew with Liverpool, and then they really took them to the wire up at Anfield. I think they lost 3-2 in extra time. But I did the game at home. I came back specially for that. That was in 91, 92. And then when I was at college, I covered games at Bramall Lane and Hillsborough. We had a pass for the college where I was training. And I started off as a newspaper photographer, but a newspaper photographer with a real, any football game, please.
Yeah. And obviously, as I said, you then became the away photographer. You went to all the Ipswich away games. You've been doing that until this season. How did that come about?
Well, I'd been covering. I worked for the Anglian for 2 years, and then I got headhunted by the Colchester Gazette, and I went there for 2 years. So I've almost had 34 years association with the East Anglian Daily Times. I only had 2 years off when I was across the water at the Evening Gazette. When I went freelance full time from the Gazette, I found a niche. Nobody wanted to do away games. Nobody really wanted to do Colchester, to be honest. But I did Colchester home and away for the East Anglian for 4 or 5 years, and then when Ipswich was starting to get good again around the 98, 99, 2000, I started getting asked to cover Ipswich games. Not many. I didn't regularly do it. I did a few for the Nationals as well. And then I think there was an agency working for the paper at the time. It wasn't something that the staff men wanted to do, was go traipsing up to Liverpool or wherever. And Terry Hunt called me in and said, "Oh, we'd really like you to do Colchester away, but we'd also like you to do Ipswich away. How do you feel about doing that?" So I jumped at the chance, really. It was a great... you'll enjoy next season. You will.
Wow.
It'll be really challenging, but you'll enjoy it.
Media scran. Forget about the media scran. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's the working.
Yeah.
The working. It's the stewarding goes up a notch, and there are things that go on. You'll have to pick your spot, and you'll probably have to sit there the entire game. There won't be the option to sort of shift ends, because there'll be 20 photographers in every corner, and particularly at somewhere like Old Trafford, and you just won't have that latitude to move freely as you can at somewhere like Accrington or Fleetwood, where you could basically sit on the manager's knee and they don't care.
Yeah, that's a big thing as well. Obviously, you were the last man to do Premier League football, for the paper and Ipswich Town, going away games, and we're now back in the big time. But a lot has changed since then, and obviously there's more photographers about as well.
Yeah. I mean, you've seen that this year when we went to Leicester. Everybody's got 2 photographers. Everybody's, they're a very professional bunch up there. They don't mess about. It is another level. It's another level of photographer. It's you get the big agency guys up there. I mean, I feel a little bit ashamed of it. It's sort of like people saying about 1,450 games or whatever, 1,500 games. I suppose there are blokes out there who probably got a lot more who basically work for Getty, who do football photography every day of the week. And that's all they do. They probably racked up a few more games than me, to be honest. But I'm doing too badly for this longevity.
Well, you've travelled a lot because you've done abroad, you've done Europe. We're going to go through Warren's top 10 pictures, or just 10 pictures that he's picked out just to show. And there's a few different grounds. Obviously, there's actually a game at Portland Road, so you have done Portland Road games as well.
I have not many, but sort of life on the road. It's a niche.
Yeah,
Ross. Nobody really wants to do it. It's quite draining. It's hard on the family life, particularly when you're going away every Saturday. And sometimes, there was one week I think I had a game with Colchester on the Saturday. Ipswich were playing on the Sunday, and then Colchester were playing on the Tuesday. Ipswich were playing on the Wednesday, and then there was another game on the Saturday. And it was like, okay, rub your hands, thinking, oh, fees. But then again, your whole week is away, and I was doing other work as well.
Of course.
So.
A lot of bits to go through.
Believe I'm not retiring fully.
Yeah, of course. We'll get onto that in a bit.
I've had so many people say, "Oh, you're retiring." No, not entirely.
Yeah, so that's just in brackets, retiring from the football, but not actually, other bits and bobs you do.
There's only one set of cameras I'm hanging up at the moment.
True that. But let's get right into these pictures. I'm sure the listeners will want to have a little look. And there's a great range here. And you were saying off record, you could have picked all the best sellies. I'm sure you've taken some great sellies. You've got a picture behind you, obviously Wembley 2000, early in Martin Royster. I'm sure that's a great picture you can pick, but we've got 10 different ones here, my friend.
You asked me for my personal favourites.
And I like there's a nice range because they're all different stories behind them. This one is interesting because it's actually not of action of a game. It's just basically a nice background, but I'll let you explain it. But this is Tranmere away.
Yes, very good spot. It is Tranmere away. I was sitting there. It was freezing cold. It was obviously a night game. I can't remember the exact date. It might have even been a Friday night. And if you look closely, you can see the lovely Barry Kent, Andy Warren, and Stuart Watson. If you really zoom in,
oh wow! Yeah.
And it's just one of those quirks where you go to a game and you can almost. You're concentrating on the game, but you should really see what's going on around you. And sometimes things happen. And I just looked up, and the light on the back of the stand was just phenomenal. And I just fiddled about and with the settings, trying to get the one bit that actually was sticking out, the press box. So it's just the two things come together. There's a little bit of art in there, composition-wise as well. So a bit arty for a football publication, but hey ho, it was just there. So why not take it?
You never know. Tranmere won that picture. Yeah, that was a 2-1 win. Actually, we won that game 2-1.
Oh, right.
Yeah, 2-1.
It was probably a better picture than the goal pictures I got, I think.
Yeah, I think that was when Tranmere's pitch was like a desert. I think just.
Oh yes.
2020, January 2020. So yeah, it was going to be cold because it's up north and it's in January.
Yes, yeah. Oh, I mean, Tranmere is a funny place to go to. It's not one of my favourite places. In fact, one time I joked that the best way of seeing Tranmere was to get stuck on the M54, one of those roads, the M6. I think we got stuck on the M6. Then we had to go across country via Chester. Carl Marston was driving. This is for a Colchester game, and we got into the ground at it's something like 3 minutes to 3, and we left shortly afterwards. And we jokingly said that was the best way of doing Tranmere, was to be in Tranmere for as little as possible.
Sorry, any Tranmere people listening. But,
it's lovely. It's lovely. There are some very nice eateries around there. I've learned to appreciate Tranmere a little bit more. I think that was one of the first trips, and it was a bit of a sort of,
yeah.
You never know. When you're going to a place for the first time, it doesn't happen very often. I get quite excited. Yeah. You saw how excited I was when we went to Rugby Services before the... Oh, no, you weren't there. You weren't in the car. I got very excited. I got very animated because I'd never been to Rugby Services.
Wow. All those years, never gone.
This is a new service.
Wow. Yeah. But I'm sure there's been...
That was my phone. I'm going to turn it on silent.
We've got a next picture coming up now, and it's an action picture. And it's a picture of John Walters. Once again, there's hundreds of Town players you're taking pictures of, obviously culture players, opposition players. This one is John Walters on the ball, in the air. Describe this one.
This just encompasses the physicality of the game.
Yeah.
I just love pictures like this. I've got several. I've got some of Wes Burns like this as well, but I just love the look on his face, the fact that he's coming straight towards me as well, and the concentration in his face. It's just one of those shots. If you think, I'm not particularly fan of stock shots. I don't particularly like the non-physical side of the game. There is so much athleticism out there. They're doing it all game long, and it's our job as photographers to sort of sum that up. Really,
tell a story.
Yeah, tell a story, but that's not even a story. But even as a stock shot, that's going to attract somebody's attention. You'll probably hear me say this a lot. It's about if you're back in the day of newspapers, you just wanted that photo to jump out of the page. You don't want it to be dull. It applies to news. It applies to sport. You want that photo to get that person's eye. I want to read that piece, and just why can't you have artistic stock shots?
Well, the next picture actually it's got a massive story behind it, and also it is a trip to Milan. Yes. And
yes.
This is actually now fans, but this is I think we did because every year there's always that anniversary looking back at the Inter Milan games, and I remember doing like a piece putting all your pictures from that trip, and I asked you about this story of this picture here, some fans with some birds, explain this story on this, and obviously the trip to Italy, to San Siro, that must be another sort of bucket list sort of thing, going to abroad and going to the San Siro, which is an iconic stadium.
Yeah, well, it was a convoluted story to get how I got to Milan. I didn't do Moscow; a staff photographer did it. I didn't do Helsingborg because they got a national agency to cover, and neither of those things worked for the paper. So I'd been working home and away for them, and then Terry, in the morning that the draw was made, Terry Hunt, I was in the office, and Terry Hunt, the editor, pulled me into his office and said, "Right, we've not done very well so far on these previous two. You're going. You get your chance now. I want loads and loads of pictures." And so I got sent, and it was great. I travelled with Derek Davis. We flew with the directors on their plane, and with the players, and it was a fantastic trip, to be honest. Lots of ale, lots of pizza. Stayed in a really nice hotel. We did it the right way. One of the pictures I took was of fans being shepherded into the ground, and they were funneled by very big policemen with barking dogs. And I felt a bit for the fans, to be honest, because we were there and we just walked in and out, and nobody paid us any attention whatsoever. And so I spent a lot of time in that square photographing the fans who come over. And the funny thing about this is I had this idea for a photo. I'd done loads of smiley, happy, thumbs up fans, but I just had this hankering. There's thousands of pigeons. And there are also lots and lots of little Italian men with bags of birdseed. So I had this idea that I would get loads and loads of pigeons in the shot. So I approached this seller and said, look, he spoke English, fortunately. I explained what I wanted, and he said, yeah, fine. And he got his mate over, and he got another mate over. And I found a couple of fans who were up for it and talked them round. And basically, we poured loads and loads of birdseed all over them to attract the birds. And then, so the birds play ball, and these guys stood there with the birds all over them. I got the shot. It was great. I particularly like the bird that's taking off right towards the lens. That just makes the picture for me. And so job done. Looked at the back of the camera, happy, everybody's happy. Behind me, I've got a whole line of little Italian blokes holding their hand out, asking me for money because they'd all got in on the act and spilled about 2 kilograms of birdseed around these two guys. And they basically cleaned me out of all my euros because I literally had all these blokes, and they were just surrounding me saying, holding their hands out saying, you need to pay me, you need to pay me, you need to pay me. So that photo probably cost me about 50 quid's worth of euros.
Wow.
To do that photo. And I never got it back on expenses. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Terry, while I was there, I did this shot.
I need to expense birdseed.
That's why it's a favourite, because there's a little bit of a story attached to it. I took loads of lovely photos in the San Siro. It was the game went by in a blur. As I was saying earlier, it was in the day when to send pictures from the ground, whilst I could send via a mobile phone, and it was very, very expensive. And I sent about 60 pictures back from the whole trip, which was significantly more than they'd received previously. And you had to have a phone line from BT, but the photographer's room was quite away from the pitch, so I spent my time, because I'm on my own and no help, and I had to sort of keep running back to upload photos. It wasn't helped by the fact that you're an hour ahead on the time as well, and in those days deadlines were king. I even photographed one of my idols, the Brazilian Ronaldo, and I didn't even know he was on the pitch.
Yeah.
He sort of came on, and it was like I looked at the photos up and oh, crikey, Ronaldo's on. So yeah, I got some fab shots. The crowd were fantastic.
10,000, I think 10,000.
Yeah. The San Siro is a phenomenal stadium. I mean, it's a little bit run down, but it's a football stadium. What do you expect? They're not all shiny. And I got some great shots of David Sheepshanks, and it's just a shame about the result, but they were overpowered in the end. I mean, what a team! Zanetti and Vieri and Ronaldo, and so yeah, it was a lovely trip. We got a great shot of George on the train, on the plane, being interviewed on the way back, and it was great to be a part of the group. Really, that was at a time when the media were embraced by the club quite wholeheartedly, and it was all a big adventure. I did 2 more after that. I went to Luxembourg, and I went to the Czech Republic, the Liberec game, and I missed the Sarted one because I had a booking, so I couldn't go. Yeah.
One thing I want to know though, if there's anybody watching this who they know these 2 fans, if you are those 2 fans, get in contact and maybe we can recreate that. Let's go to Milan and let's recreate that shot. So there we go. That'll be interesting.
Let's hope we get that far. That'd be great.
Yeah, true. That'd be great. Yeah, if we could. Yeah, we'll wait and see.
I could even come out of retirement for that one.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, yeah. We'll bring it back. Get him back. Yeah. One more. Next picture. This is more a modern day one. I think this is actually during lockdown. Obviously, you were able to go to away games back then. This is Luke Chambers' goal against Blackpool. What was that like as well, covering games during lockdown, behind closed doors games, just silent, you could just basically hear the players, the managers, and obviously this goal as well. This is actually a cracker from Luke Chambers as well.
Oh, I love this photo because from a technical photographic standpoint, one of the most difficult things is predicting where the guy who's going to score the goal is going to be. And as well as I know, it's bloody difficult to get pictures of goals. That's why they're like hen's teeth. It's difficult to predict it's, as I said the other day on the radio, with the Kieran McKenna era, it's become even more difficult to predict because they do so many things on the training ground. You don't know where Wes Burns is going to cut the ball back to. You've got people like Connor Chaplin running in onto the ball. Now you've got Sarmiento, you've got Amari, and you just don't know where it's coming from. And I've missed more goals this season and last season probably than ever before because it's so unpredictable. And I wouldn't want to defend. I used to play football. I wouldn't want to defend against these guys. They're just coming at you from all angles. So I was particularly happy with one because I watched this back on the TV, and the ball basically came from a corner. And I think the ball came straight at Luke Chambers, and he just wellied it. So I've got to predict where Luke Chambers is going to be. I just spotted it. The ball, when the ball is, you're photographing a corner, you look at the flight of the ball and predict where you're going to focus. And I predicted that. I looked at it, and whether it was just a fluke, I don't know. But I just thought, crikey, that's going long. Oh, Chambo's there. And then he just unleashed it. And I don't think Chambo will ever score a goal like that again in his, I think it was so that's why I picked it, because, it's the back of his head, it's the back of him, but it's just the, physicality of it. And it's, wow, that was a hell of a goal. And it's difficult to get good goal pictures where, it sums up what the goal is. A lot of the time it's just ball coming off foot, and there's no defender in it. There's no goal in it. You can't really see a lot. So I was quite proud of that one at the time. I was probably, inwardly very smug, thinking, crikeys, I got that one.
Obviously, you're sitting in a different position because normally, the best position is, behind one of the goals, the town attack are going, but that, as you said, that's more behind. But obviously, that was during, lockdown.
COVID was strange. We had lots of restrictions. I was just thankful to be able to go to games, because I felt for people. It was hard. Lots of people lost. Lost work, lost stuff, and it was just great to have something to look forward to each week. My work dried up in the space of 3 days. Bookings were just falling like nine pins, and it was sitting at home all day long, gardening. That will be what retirement's really like. If I'm not ready for that yet, but hard time, but for everybody. And funny enough, without the atmosphere is great, but you have to look at the logistics of it. It was so much easier to do your job. You could park. You could find somewhere to park. You got away from the ground so much quicker. So on balance, I actually quite like COVID. You didn't have stewards having to go at you the whole time. You didn't have, it was a weird time, but it's nice to have the atmosphere back.
Yeah, never again. But
not getting any more grief off of fans was great.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't sit in front of me. You're too tall.
Yeah. Many times we've been moved because we're in front. But sometimes that's where they put us, and then we're going, you're not going to be there. I went, this is where we're going to be supposed to go. But we got actually, we're going to go and talk about fans, because obviously that's another thing you have to take pictures of as well. Reacting, celebrations, sad fans and stuff. We have got a picture we'll get onto shortly. But up next is this picture of Darryl Murphy, and I think this is actually him scoring at Fulham, and obviously this Fulham defender.
This is just, I love this photo. It's one of those times where you think, I've got the goal, and you just get that little cherry on the top of the cake when you look at his nose, and it's not clever. It's not a clever photo, but it's just that added. So it's a goal. It's quite nicely composed. But if you look at it, you look closer, you get a second look at it and just see just how badly his nose is broken. Scoring that goal, it was just the irony. The irony is not lost on me, because I'd been to Fulham with Ipswich a few times, and there was one year where there were torrential downpours and the A12 was closed at Kelvedon. And it's probably the one time in all my career that I was seriously late for a game. And so we were all traveling together as Tony Garnett and Derek Davis, myself, and we all rocked up to the game 15 minutes in. So you can imagine the pressure we're sort of bustling through. You've got to get your pass, and everybody's gone, and you got to get through the pressure, and then somehow make your way surreptitiously to the side of the pit without having several thousand fans taking the mickey out of you for being late. And so I sat down next to a guy I knew, and I said, "Haven't missed anything, have you? Have I?" No, fine. Oh, phew. And it wasn't until about half time somebody mentioned, "Oh, I wonder how Finidi George is." And it's like, "What about Finidi George?" "Oh, well, he went off on a stretcher."
Oh, no.
And it's like, "Oh shit, this is our big signing, and he's gone off on a stretcher." "When did that happen?" 12 minutes. Oh no. Oh, I was mortified, absolutely mortified. And he headbutted the back of somebody's head and fractured his cheekbone. And I hadn't, just like, oh no. In those days, I used to get phone calls from Terry Hunt, the editor, saying, "Have you got?" And the pressure was quite high. There was an expectation. Ipswich were in the Premier League, and they expected to have all the best pictures of every incident. And I was always living in fear of having that phone call. Unfortunately, photographers are quite a tight-knit bunch in some ways, and we won't shaft each other actively. But so there was a guy I knew in there who had a spare image, and he let me have it to send through. So I still owe him to this day for that. I was wary that one of these days he'll call that in. But yeah, so I was lucky but unlucky. But you have to just it's a nice photo. It's a nice goal picture for a good reason.
Definitely. Next is a celebration one. This is actually a big talking point because I think this man got fined for this, and it's obviously a David Norris celebration. Handcuffs.
Oh, yes.
Obviously, this.
I was a bit wary about putting this in because there's a lot of baggage attached to this photo. It's one of those photos where you wish you hadn't taken it. At the time, I'd the lead up to this photo was great. I was working the night before until about 3 a.m. I had to get up at something like 6:30 to go up there. I was so travel lagged. I went into town to get some money out of a cash point. I couldn't remember my PIN. I bought 2 cans of Red Bull before the game to try and get myself going. And so the game got going, and Ipswich, I think Ipswich won 1-0. Fairly sure they won 1-0.
I'll double check that, but carry on.
The ball came in from a corner and it pinged around. I think there was an initial header by Gareth McCauley, which hit the bar, and then the ball pinged around in the area, and then it ended up in the net. It's one of those classic, oh my God, where do I point the camera next? And all I could think of was, shit, I've missed the goal. I didn't get it. And then Norris, I was sat in front of the Ipswich fans. Norris ran the other way, which was also disappointing in that, usually if you miss the goal, you can get the celebration. And he ran the other way. And I looked through the photos afterwards, and that was about a nanosecond. He literally turned around and put his hands up and then put them down again. It was not a protracted gesture. It was really quick. And Derek Davis, the reporter, asked him about the celebration, and I'd sent it to the Greening because I thought, well, I've got nothing else. I'm going to have to send this, so I sent it through and didn't think anything more of it. And Derek Davis asked the question afterwards, and Mr. Norris said why he did it, and didn't think any more of it. We drove home. Derek said to me, "Oh, did you get that celebration?" I said, "Yeah, that's all I got of the goal. I'm really sorry. Not much cop, I'm afraid." But and Ipswich won 1-0, so I was a bit of and I was disappointed. I wasn't a happy bunny. You know what I'm like when Ipswich win and I don't get the winning goal. And I just slept for most of the way back. Didn't think anything more of it. Derek said, "Oh, you might want to keep hold of that photograph. I think there'll be some interest in it." And the next day I had some really cagey guy from the Daily Mirror asking about photographs from the game. And he didn't mention the celebration picture, but I'm not that stupid. So I said, "Oh, what you mean the celebration picture then?" He said, "Ah, yes." And didn't think any more of it, sent the photos over. And I had a phone call midnight on the Sunday saying that the Mirror were running this picture on the front page. I think it was the Express. Could they have it too? And it's like, what's going on? What's going on? And the phone sort of kept pinging the next morning because they've used this picture on the front page. And I was absolutely mortified because it was a story about Daryl Flahavan. It's one of Mr. Norris's friends who had been imprisoned for drink driving, and he killed 2 kids on the M6 in a crash. And I was absolutely mortified. I wish I'd never taken it, because all I could think of as a parent was I didn't want my image to be the one that's sort of bringing it all back to them. It'd been in the past, but you don't want it to bring it back to them. And I was absolutely mortified. I just thought, oh my God, I'm going to have the whole world, having a go at me for taking this picture. And it just the day got weirder and weirder because other papers, the phone didn't stop ringing. I had a car service booked, and they were talking about it on BBC Radio Suffolk on the way to the car service. It seemed to be a hot topic. And I joked with the guys who were doing my car saying, well, it's going to be a really hot topic. I'll know it's really big if they start talking about it on the Jeremy Vine show on Radio 2. And they did. And it's like, oh my word. And so I wish I'd never taken the bloody thing. It was a phenomenal time. It was one of those things that, so I was a bit wary about putting it in, but it was one of the 2 most controversial photographs I've ever taken. I've had a few, mainly at Blackpool, funny enough. Blackpool's one of those places where things happen.
Yeah. There
was a big brawl when I photographed for Colchester United where one of the Blackpool fans, Blackpool players, judo threw one of the Colchester players to the floor, then picked him up by the throat and threw him back down. And this was all off the board, and I got 65 images of this. And it was a mass brawl. Substitutes came on the pitch, and I got a letter from the Football League saying, "You will send us everything that you've taken, and not edit anything, and we want this for our disciplinary." And I think I got them banned for several weeks on the back of my images. And it just seems to be Blackpool. Things happen in Blackpool.
Yeah. Obviously, the Luke Famous goal as well. So at least that's a good thing. That was a goal when it was.
It's weird. Blackpool seems to be the place. There are other things that, the guy we travelled with, Barry Kent, had a big win.
Yeah.
Whilst at Blackpool.
Yeah.
On one of his bets, and I always remember things that happen in Blackpool.
Yeah, so what happens is Blackpool stays in Blackpool.
So it's ironic that we have 2 photos from Blackpool, really, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. Next photo, and I'm sure you've got loads of pictures from this day. Obviously, Wembley 2000s, but this is Mark Venus holding up "We're Going Up." Obviously, you can't see his face, but we know it's Mark Venus because number 6. But yeah, I'm sure you've got loads of pictures from this day. Yes.
Lots and lots of images. It was a great day. From my perspective, a bit weird because I was talking to the other photographer, Jamie Niblock, yesterday, and I was the freelance who had to send early pictures back for the Anglian. The staffers came down too, obviously, and we had a coin toss for who sat at which end, and I lost. So I ended up sitting at the red end of the ground with the Barnsley fans. And whilst, I had lots of action to photograph and the after bit, it was a bit like sitting in a morgue. There was no atmosphere at all at the end. I had the players celebrate in front of me when the final whistle went, which was nice. It was another one of those games. These games the big games go past in a blur. You're so busy doing stuff that you forget. I mean, I found a lovely picture of Marcus Stewart walking around in his underpants because he's basically given his shorts to an Ipswich fan. I was thinking, is that very Anglian? Will that pass the cornflake test? And pictures of Martin Reuter and George Burley and David Sheepshanks kissing the carp. And
why this one then? Why did you pick this one?
I just like it because it says Ipswich Town, but it also, the player isn't a distraction. The message is there. It's just an unusual picture. You know me, Russ. I like unusual pictures. I just think it's the Martin Reuter one's fine. They're celebrations, but it's just having that little bit of something different.
Yeah. Well, this next picture is different as well because I mentioned, I think this is the Norwich game, and there's a great picture of Danny Haynes celebrating, basically, and which is great. Obviously, celebration pics are great, but this is a bit different. This is a Town fan. It's just his hands, but doing the score on that day, 2-1. Story behind this. You just felt it was a good.
Yeah, I had wider shots of the guy holding his hands up. There are a lot of gestures going backwards and forwards. There's a fair amount of animosity in that corner. Usually, it's a bit of an eye opener to sit between the two sets of fans in the dugout, as you no doubt probably noticed when we played them recently. And I just thought this photo really did sum up. You can see he's in with the Ipswich fans. It's just something different, just something other than the run of the mill stuff. And it's not rude, so that's good. And I wouldn't say I overly love Derby Day games. It's quite a charged atmosphere in which to work. Yield some lovely pictures. There have been good days at Carrow Road that I can remember. I've been a couple of times where we've won, and an awful lot of times where we haven't. I mean, Derby days used to be really fun. I mean, because I would have to go back to the Rouen Road office. And so I'd come out at half time with my big, huge lens slung over my shoulder. I'd hot foot it up the road. And that area was renowned at the time for being frequented by ladies of the night. And I'd basically go trotting past with all my cameras, and I'd be given offers, and I would say, "Sorry, no, I'm on a deadline." And I'd go back to the office and put my films through the machine.
Like it.
And so there's been some fun Derby games over the years. I never do home ones though. Always missed the home Derby games. I only ever go up to Carrow Road. But they look after you up there, don't they?
They do, actually, to be fair. They do. And obviously the game recently we lost, but it was a good atmosphere overall. Next picture, Warren. This is, a naughty thing that a Man United player did, and that is Ruud van Nistelrooy. Oh. Yeah. Diving.
So this is one of those moments where Ipswich needed to win to stay up. I'm not sure whether they were 1-0 up at the time. I know my memory fades. But Ruud van Nistelrooy collapsed in the penalty area. I've spoken to John McGreal. I've played golf with John McGreal a couple of times, and he's a lovely guy. And because he was at Colchester, and he swore he never touched him. And it was just one of those moments. I think United equalised from the penalty spot. I'm not sure. My mind, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but it robbed Ipswich of a real chance of salvation to stay up. And I remember walking back to the Anglian office. Everybody's obviously unhappy, but Terry Hunt, the editor, comes steaming into the photographer's room, red-faced and quite upset, and in sort of very sweary terms said, "I hope you got that person falling over, because that was never a penalty." And I was able to smugly sit there and say, with a big grin on my face, and I showed him the screen, said, "Yep, Terry, I got it." So it's just one of those lovely moments when you're able to do that.
Yeah, it was 0-0. Yeah, it was 0-0 at the time, and obviously that was the winning goal. So to win.
Was it?
Okay. Yeah, 1-0.
I'm showing my football knowledge here. I don't. You know as well as I do. How do you find that the games just go?
Yeah, they just blend into one. You know, they just blend into one these days.
Even when you're doing it.
Yeah.
Even when you're doing it. In fact, I learned a trick. I'm going to pass on a trick to you here. So what you need to do is, you know, in those long, cold afternoons where the clock, you've got a clock and it seems to be standing still, and it's 65 minutes, and you've got what could be the winning goal, but nothing seems to be happening. And, you know, you look up and it's 66 minutes and it feels like an eternity. What you do is you get your laptop out and you start editing photos. And I'll tell you what, that makes time really speed up.
It does.
It's uncanny, because you'll look up from your laptop and suddenly find it's 85 minutes.
And still nothing's happened. Nothing's still happened in the game.
Yeah, nothing's happened. It's great. It's my tip for you when you go to the Premier League, okay?
Yeah, definitely cold afternoons up north, definitely. Final picture, Warren, and it is a Selly picture, and it's one of those. Obviously, he became iconic because of the celebration, but it is Shefty Kuchi, swan dive. Yeah, once again, you got to be timing as well to capture this as well.
And one of the frustrating things about people who do signature stuff is not knowing when it's coming. But then this time, I think I'd missed 2 or 3 of Shefty's wonderful dives being badly placed. And I was sat behind the goal. That's the National Hockey Stadium, I think.
It is, yeah.
At Milton Keynes. And I was sitting behind the goal with 3 or 4 other photographers, and I knew it was coming when he scored. And it's one of those smug moments when you know it's coming. I was able to pick up the right lens, have the right lens at the right time in the right place, and just got the picture. And that's probably the best one I ever took of it. And it is what it is. It's nice, you know, out of focus in the background. But it's that knowledge. It's knowing the players. It's knowing what's coming. If you followed a team and followed the players for that long, that you know it's coming. And the other 3 guys didn't get it.
Perfect.
And, you know,
got the money shot.
Yeah, it's good when that happens. It's nice also when you're the only person in one particular corner.
Yeah.
And it kind of started at Cheltenham. Do you remember Cheltenham when Connor Chapman ran towards me, stuffed the ball up his shirt and started sucking his thumb?
Yeah.
And it's like, I couldn't understand why he came to me, because the club photographer was the other side. The vast majority of the photographers were the other side of the pitch, and I was the only photographer who chosen to sit right in that corner. And he came running towards me, and I had this sense of confusion. Why me?
I think sometimes it depends on who set the player up, or how they've shot, and if they're, that's just how their direction they're running sometimes.
But he just seemed to look at me straight in the eye. It was really weird. It was like he was loving the camera, and he sort of doing it. I was like, oh, okay, then just go with it.
Yeah. Some players love the camera, and they obviously want to celebrate and want to get that captured. But no, 10 really good photos there, my friend. Sort of next 2 questions really is, we've mentioned a lot of grounds there. We've mentioned San Siro, we've mentioned the National Hockey Stadium in Milton Keynes. Yeah. But what's your favourite and worst grounds to shoot at?
Oh, favourite. We've done the rating the grounds game when we're driving along and having to while away the hours. I think we've played a few games in the past, and rating your favourite grounds is pretty good. One of them, and I think you have certain criteria as a photographer. So access, where can you sit? What's the press room like? Do you get food?
Hmm.
How far away do you have to park? And there's all sorts of criteria we came up with. And on those criteria, Derby County and Leicester were up there for ease of getting to, because they're very central, not very far away. Coventry would be a close thing as well, because it, those Midland grounds where they give you a little bit of access and not too officious, quite welcoming. Yeah, I would go with any of those three really. You expecting me to say Portman Road, but no.
Yeah, you're a away day photographer, so no.
Yeah,
it's got to be the away day.
I wouldn't say Colchester either, because Colchester is one of the coldest grounds in the country, right up there with Stoke. Stoke is the coldest.
Yeah.
Colchester is right up there with it. The wind blowing across. Worst grounds. Carlisle. Definitely Carlisle. Yeah. Oh, nothing.
Wrong way.
Absolutely nothing there. No hospitality of any description. Not even you've been in a car for 5.5 hours. I think the least that can happen is that if you're a working person, they might just put a bit of tea and coffee out for a photographer. The best trip I ever had to Carlisle was I was meeting a friend who was working for up there, and I arranged to meet in the pub beforehand. And I had about 3 pints, and I forgot the kickoff. And I came out at 10 to 3, and I ran to the ground. The pub was only across the road, so I was all right. I made kickoff, but I sat there for the entire first half with the effects of 3 pints,
sobering up a little bit, trying to
sobering up rapidly, thinking with my legs crossed. But that was the best trip to Carlisle. But it's such a long way. There was just nothing there apart from a pub outside.
Yeah.
And Barrow wasn't much fun, but Barrow were quite hospitable. Mm-hmm. Funny enough, I found Anfield a horrible place to work. Anfield is, for atmosphere, 10 out of 10. The atmosphere, it really does make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up when they start singing when you Walk Alone thing, and it's like, just never walk alone. It just really, the atmosphere is just electric, but to work there is just a nightmare. And the last day of the season when Ipswich got relegated, I was sat in front of the Ipswich fans at the end of the game, and we have to sit very low. There's no pit or anything. You have to sit as low as possible. And then with about 2 minutes to go, and you're thinking, I've got to encompass all this disappointment that you're being relegated, and with 2 minutes to go, a whole line of stewards comes to stand right in front of the photographers. And then if it isn't so bad, a whole line of policemen are behind them. And I was like looking up at them thinking, what? Sort of shrugging at them to say, what are you doing, guys? You can't do this. And they're just sort of like stony faced. And so the irony was, I actually laid down on my front, crawled forward, and poked my lens between the sort of legs of a policeman and started shooting pictures like a sniper through to get the shot. And he looked down at me and said, "Are you all right down there, sir?" I said, "I'm fine now." And I got the pictures, but I just couldn't see why it had to be so difficult. And Ipswich's fans had awards for being so good and so well behaved. It was just complete and utter overkill. And I think the same game, I'd been working in the wire room, and basically I came down to the side of the pitch hoping to walk along the track next to the pitch, and I was stopped by a couple of stewards. He said, "No, you can't go along here." And I said to him, "Well, the dugout's not this side. I can walk along here, surely." "No, you'll have to do the concourse. You have to go along the concourse." The concourse is full of about 8,000 drinking Liverpool fans, and I've got boxes and cameras, and I had to work my way through 100 yards of fans to be able to come down the steps at the other end. It's just, madness. Lovely
I
going
look
to
forward
Ross.
to
You
that.
love that one. You're really looking forward to it, aren't you, Ross?
Yeah, definitely.
Things have probably changed since then.
Yeah, you hope so. You hope so. Well, we'll wait and see. But yeah, the big question, really, Warren, will be on. You sort of mentioned it at the start of the chat, but why now? Ipswich Town now back in the Premier League. You've had 2 great years. We've had covering Ipswich home and away. But yeah, why now?
I think it's been coming for a while. I think it's a combination of other clients asking me to work on match days, the late nights, having to get home at 3 a.m. and then you have a booking the following day to be in London at 9. And I'm getting too old for this game. That's a young man's game, Ross. And I've had a very good run. The lady on the radio asked me, why? And I said, well, the last 2 years have been utterly fantastic. But there was an awful lot of times where you were sitting in the services at 1 a.m. or even at 7 p.m. on the way back from a freezing cold game at Wigan, asking yourself why. Why do you do it? Why? I don't know why the fans do it. Fair play to the fans. I mean, they do it and they fork out a lot of money to do this. But for me, it's a job. This is my job, and it's time to go out on a high. I was just on tenterhooks thinking I just didn't want to go to the playoffs. I just wanted Ipswich to go.
All of us did as well. All of us did.
I was so relieved, after the Coventry game, and particularly after the Huddersfield game. Although I was a little annoyed that it all passed me by again, because last year it all sort of kicked off for the Exeter game, and I wasn't involved with that, thinking that we would be lifting the trophy at Fleetwood, and that turned into an absolute damp squib of a trip. And in the same this year, I had a booking, and I was all set to come down to Portman Road, and I was photographing the Ipswich to Colchester hospital hike charity walk, which I'd been booked for. So I missed out again. I missed out on all the blue smoke. I missed out on all the excitement. So I would have loved to have been there, but just wasn't to be.
But so many great photos through the years, my friends. And you got any other business, any other notes you want to mention? Some shout outs. I'm sure there's so many people traveled around the country.
I'm so thankful for everybody who's traveled with me, going back to the time of Tony Garnett and Derek Davis, the Colchester boys, Glenn Speller, Neil Kelly, John Waldron, Carl Marston, crikey, the number of times I've spent with him, and I used to drive a lot on his trips as well. And obviously the current crop, you, Alex, Stuart, and we do spend a lot of time together. That's the one thing I think really I will miss, the camaraderie of facing adversity. I mean, I was at Blackburn, and there were a couple of guys who I've grown to know over the years through just being in the Northwest covering games. One works for Getty, one works for Reuters, and I've known them for years. And I suddenly thought, oh, do you know what, guys? I'm not going to see you anymore. I'm not going to see you 2 or 3 times a year now. This is, coming to an end. So that was, Coventry. It hit me. You could tell that it was. I didn't quite get tearful, but it was. I still should have nicked that media vest.
You should have done.
I should have done. I should have just.
I've got loads because I don't know. I go and interview the fans afterwards, and I sometimes travel back with a few people I know, and I'm like, I might as well just take it. So there's a lot. Some I've stolen.
This sounds really anal, but when we came out of the ground, some well-meaning guy had gone around picking up all the passes, and he'd taken the pass, and that was the one thing I thought I'll keep. I'll have my pass, and he'd gone around collecting the lanyards. And I went back to my workstation where everything was, and it had gone. And it's like, oh. So I emailed the press officer to say, look, can you send me a PDF, because I'd really I've got the first press pass from my game at the Zenit Trophy, Cup game at Wimbledon. It'd be really nice to have the first and the last. So he sent me a PDF. bless him.
Nice. Like that. That's
He
great.
just,
Well, we
looks
jokingly
after
said
an old
off.
man.
Yeah, we jokingly said off the record. Maybe a book in motion. Maybe we can do a petition to get Warren to do a book because I'm sure
Oh,
there's many more stories and great pictures.
It'd probably be a pretty dull read, but I think I could do a whole guidebook on places to eat outside grounds. I still think,
OK Diner as well. OK
the
Diner.
OK Diner, yeah. OK Diner, Greg's, any Greg's.
Yes, Mr. Greg's himself.
Yes, any Greg's. God, they used to. I've been through them. It used to be the Harry Ramsden's fish and chips.
Yeah.
Papa John's pizzas used to be sold in various stopping motorway services places over the years. Cool. Well, you think how much I've spent in these places?
A lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the OK Diner, I will miss.
We'll miss you too, Warren.
It goes back to back in the day. We used to try and make a trip of it. So in the Premier League, we used to have places. There's a pub near Kettering in a place called Broughton, and we used to phone ahead and tell them we were coming, and they knew us, and they knew we ordered loads of food, and they keep a table for us, and we would. There was another place for the Southern games, just near Ingatestone. There was a pub which was run by an ex-professional footballer that Tony Garnett knew very well, and he'd look after us. So it was sort of have a bit of an evening out, not rush home to the wife and kids, and not the only other option was to rush home and watch Pop Idol or something, or sit in the pub.
Yeah, pretty much. But mate, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining me. Some great stories, great pictures. Final words to the viewers and just your career taking pictures at Ipswich Town away from home.
Oh well, thanks for the ride. More than anything, it's been great. I've been getting a lot of stick saying I will come back, but I don't think I will. I said it with a little twinkle in my eye on TV. No, I don't think so. I don't think I'll actually step foot in another football ground unless there's an American football match at Tottenham's ground, in which case I might go down. You never know. Never say never, as they say.
Very true. I
might have to come back and help you. You never know.
Yeah, I may have to be on the blow up. Warren, we've got a Champions League final. We need you.
There's still a few grounds I haven't done.
Yeah,
because they keep changing.
They do.
So I haven't done the Etihad.
Yeah,
although I went to Main Road loads of times.
Yeah.
I haven't done Brentford's new ground. So I've been to Griffin Park bloody more times I can mention. And what's the other one? Oh, West Ham's ground.
Yeah.
Been in the stadium, but you have, you know the rules. You have to have a press pass and be working.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I never did quite make the 92. It fluctuates. I think I was at 89 now.
Yeah.
The closing number is 89.
Wow. Unbelievable, mate. Unbelievable career. And as well, the thing is, your pictures will get used. They're timeless. As we always say, some of these pictures are timeless. They get used. I've been using some of your photos from where you probably thought, God, why that picture getting used? But they just get used because it's, stories happen, players, something happens. So, but yeah, mate.
Maybe I can finally get my archive in order.
Yeah.
Well, I've been looking through it, and it's crazy because I look through at the early games, and you look at it and think, well, I sent 59 pictures from Coventry, and I look back at the early games, and I only have about 5 pictures, 10 pictures. I think Colchester went to Wembley. I think it was 8 pictures of a trip to Wembley, and I can't understand why. Because
the change of just the industry of journalism and online, obviously back then it was just paper, but now it's online. We need images for online and everything. It's just that's a big change in when you first started to this season. That's so much change in pictures. Obviously pictures are the big thing. I think it's the most important thing. Obviously the words are great, but to make a story you've got to have that picture to tell it as well. So but mate, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
All right, my pleasure.